Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Luni, Libes, serial entrepreneur, mentor, advisor, and educator. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I kind of found you on LinkedIn, and I thought, wow, this guy's doing tons of stuff. But maybe kind of before we get into that, let's get to know you a little bit better and kind of cover where you grew up.
Oh, okay. I'm a bi-coastal person. I grew up in New Jersey and LA.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so, and then back to New Jersey after LA.
Okay, so kind of what made, like, you were born in New Jersey or LA?
I was born in New Jersey. I won't tell you which town.
All right, fair.
These days. And then moved out to LA, started school there as a little kid.
Okay.
Moved back at age 10.
Okay.
And then went to school in Pittsburgh, lived in Texas for a little while, and then decided after I finally had the chance to pick where I wanted to live, I picked Seattle.
Sure, love Seattle. It's a great town. So I'm kind of curious then, what did you kind of take in post-secondary education?
Oh boy. So I'm trained as a computer scientist and mathematician.
Okay, so what kind of got you going into that field?
Oh, I got a computer I learned how to program it at age 12.
Okay.
And I'm old enough where that's odd.
No, I think that's awesome. I think that's really cool. But what kind of got you interested in the computer then, that early on?
Oh, I have no idea. I had my parents bought a Pong game when I was 6.
Okay.
Pong came out when I was 6.
Sure.
Maybe 5. Went down that path, had an Atari 2600, right? The first computer game you could have at home. And one natural trajectory that I've seen in the tech world of that is, then an Apple II and then a Mac and then onward to learn how to do that as a profession.
Sure.
So I think I've always had a computer around. I'm 46, but when they describe the digital generation, the millennials now, and the digital natives, I've been on email since the early '80s. I've pretty much always had email.
Well, that's awesome. So you ended up in Seattle. Kind of, was there a big thing, like a big reason you wanted to live in Seattle, or what made you move to Seattle eventually?
Yeah, I came for the weather.
Okay.
Which everyone laughs at that line.
Sure. Okay.
So I was living in Texas, and it was like 120 degrees in November.
Sure.
It was brutally hot. I didn't like. That was the first time I lived in a place where you lived in air conditioning all year round. The heater never came on.
Right.
And I didn't want to do that. I'd grown up most of my life in New Jersey, where it's freezing cold in the winter.
Sure.
You're further north than that.
Yep.
Freezing, but I wanted someplace temperate.
Okay.
I pulled out the map of the U.S. I was planning on doing a software company.
Okay.
I can do a software company anywhere. This was 1991 when I pulled out the map.
Okay.
And really, there was the only place you could go that was special in 1991 was the Bay Area, not San Francisco, but Silicon Valley below San Francisco.
Sure.
And that one didn't appeal to me. I'd been there many times before. And so the next choice was anywhere.
Sure.
And I picked Seattle because it seemed like a great place. It was the most livable city in the country that year, according to the magazines that say such things.
Interesting.
I'd been out there twice. I'd been out here twice. It seemed like a nice place. It was green. It was clean. Never got too hot. Never got too cold.
Sure.
So I got in a car and drove out.
No, that's awesome. I always love kind of knowing people's stories of kind of like where they end up and like how they got there and like why they chose it. Like I've been to Seattle a couple of times and I don't know, the thing that I noticed, like it's got this like clean, you get off the plane and it's got this like clean smell about the city. Like it's just refreshing and it's like there's lots going on. Obviously it is always kind of had a really good music scene and kind of like a art culture. Obviously like Microsoft is not too far and like, Amazon, and there's a bunch of kind of tech in that area as well, right?
yeah, it's become, since I've been here, it's become so much more. When I
Sure.
got here, there wasn't that wasn't here yet. Grunge hadn't even been invented yet.
Sure.
Starbucks had one store, uh,
Really? That's
maybe four stores by the time I came here. But Microsoft was way out in the boonies, out in the edge of the suburbs. Amazon was a dream; it hadn't started yet. It was 3 years away from starting.
sure.
The city was still thinking about the billboard that literally said "Last one out of Seattle, shut the lights off," which was a downturn from Boeing back 10 years earlier.
Really interesting.
Yeah, it became much more after I got here, and that was all nice too. But yeah, the whole thing about clean, we're in the corner of the country. There isn't any big smokestacks around to pollute the air. There aren't that many people. There's way more trees. Air's clean, water's clean. The only downside up here is that it rains every day.
Sure.
And just for all the people listening, it rains absolutely every day. We don't need any more people here. Thank you.
Cool. So let's kind of get into kind of what you're doing. You're kind of involved in a bunch of things. You're a managing director at a couple companies. You're founding some stuff. You wrote a book. You're mentoring. You're doing tons of stuff. So let's maybe kind of cover a little bit of kind of what exactly you're doing and kind of where do you want to start with that? Maybe with Kick?
All right. The way I explain it, people look at my LinkedIn profile and think I'm crazy.
Sure. You're doing lots. It's awesome. I love it, and that's kind of why I wanted to have you on the show.
Yeah, it's really long profile, but actually, in fact, I only do one thing.
Okay.
All right. So all I do every day is get up and find a way to help a startup. That's all.
Okay. Interesting.
Now, the way I do it is by having lots of different organizations that I work at or work for.
Okay.
And so my day job, the next level down when I describe this is my day job is that I'm the managing director and founder of Fledge,
Okay.
which is the Conscious Company Accelerator,
Okay.
which has taken the best practices from the tech accelerators and brought it to the space of impact.
Got you.
We've been doing that for 4 years, 52 companies, about to do 7 more next week.
Wow. So what type of companies do you guys kind of help? And even if you want to mention a couple, you can if you're comfortable doing that. It's up to you.
All right. So we're an impact investing fund. We're looking for companies that make the world better. And you hear that phrase a lot. I am a former techie. I spent 20 years in tech. They all talk about we want to change the world. We want to make things better. We work with companies that actually make the world better.
Okay.
That alleviate poverty or clean the environment or make things that are unrecyclable recyclable, make government transparent, and so on. And so a couple of these companies, the most impactful that we've worked with is a company called Evernew.
Okay.
Based here in Seattle. They have found a way to make cotton recyclable.
Really?
So in the history of kind, every piece of cotton clothing ever made has either been thrown away or was destined to be thrown away until Evernew came along.
Really? That's very cool.
Another one in Argentina is called ArcLight. They have a technique for taking any plastic, whether or not you think it's recyclable, and recycling it into a replacement for stone and concrete.
Interesting. Okay.
We have 2 of the largest cook stove companies in Africa. We're taking the smoke out of the homes of African women and children.
Wow.
We have green charcoal companies in Kenya and Malawi.
Okay.
We have a marketplace for green builders based in Shanghai called Cedar. It helps green builders and green building suppliers find each other. We got a company here in Seattle makes low-cost medical devices for anyone, anywhere in the world, but specifically the developing world. A company was in Seattle called Simplify, which is one of the many companies that's online trying to make our government transparent.
Okay, interesting.
A great solution for telling your congresspeople what you want them to do.
Sure.
So that perhaps they listen to us for a change.
Sure.
And it keeps going, all the way down to the only domestic producer of escargot in the United States.
Wow.
There's 52, so I'll stop there.
Sure. So, do you guys find these companies? Do they contact you? A little bit of both? Like, how do you guys go about kind of recruiting people or
Yeah, it's
companies?
50-50. So word of mouth and shotgun marketing finds half the companies. They reach out to us.
Okay.
And then there are dozens and dozens of websites now where startups create a profile and list themselves to be found.
Sure.
So we'll go and look at many of those sites and find the startups. And if they look interesting, we'll reach out and say, hey, maybe we could help you.
Okay. So you said, like, how exactly do you help them?
All right. So the best practices are kind of threefold.
Okay.
One, first help is $20,000 in cash.
Okay.
So we write a check to them, and they get a little bit of money. Take some of that money and they spend it to come here to Seattle for 8 weeks.
Okay.
So they get on a plane, they find a place to stay, but they're with us here in Impact Hub Seattle every day for 8 weeks.
Okay.
And then while they're here, we teach them how to be better startups, and that has three parts.
Okay.
Part is a class in entrepreneurship.
Okay. So are you teaching this? Do you have a bunch of people teaching you this, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, I'll answer that in a second when we
Okay.
talk about my other job.
Sure.
There's a class that I teach that I created for this and other purposes.
Okay.
And then secondly, we flood them with mentors. So we have
Okay.
about 340 people who have so far volunteered to help these teams,
Wow, that's awesome.
more than we have teams. So
Wow.
basically, we have a problem is too many mentors, not enough teams.
Wow.
High class problem.
Yeah, totally. Bad problem to have.
And so they come in and they work with the teams as well.
Got you.
And then we focus a ton of effort on teaching these entrepreneurs how to talk about what they're doing, how to get that down to a 60-second pitch and a 6-minute pitch. And we put them up on stage in front of 200 people, record it, put it up on the internet, and aim to make those TED Talks. Because kind of what our companies do is way more inspirational and interesting than an app that does whatever.
Got you.
So they're able to get up on stage, and most of them are able to get up on stage and say something that's equivalent to at least a TEDx talk, if not a TED Talk.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's really cool. So how does a company, I guess, go about if they want to reach out to you guys?
That's pretty easy. There's a website. It's called fledge.co.
Okay.
.co because the guy who owns the .com has owned it forever.
Sure.
If anyone knows them, tell them to give it to us. And on that site is a description of all the details and a button you can press to apply.
Okay.
Now, the downside of Fledge, it does have a downside, is that this time around 2% of the applicants got accepted.
Okay. Why is that?
We're a for-profit company. We have limited resources. We only pick 7 at a time.
Okay. And how many times a year do you do this?
We've been doing it twice a year, every year. So,
Okay.
but each time it's harder. Last time it was 3.5%.
Got you.
And so we're down to that range of winning the lottery, of going to Stanford Business School or Harvard Business School, which is a shame. Right? We'd love to help more companies, but just the reality is that's what we're down to.
Okay, so would you be able to help more companies if you had more money, or like what's kind of holding you back? Is it just because it sounds like you have the people potentially to help?
Yeah, there's a bunch of factors, including money, including the amount of capital available for companies like this in the world.
Right.
And most of our mentors are here in Seattle. Most of the companies that come in are not. So to tackle these problems, for 2016, I got some new goals.
Okay.
My personal goals. One is to replicate Fledge into more cities.
Okay, very cool.
Just announced that 2 weeks ago.
Okay, that's awesome.
We are looking for people who want to be like me, who want to help startups start up.
Okay.
In major world cities.
Okay. So like if somebody wants to start up a Fledge in their city, how do they get a hold? Do they just reach out to you?
Yeah. So come on LinkedIn and send me an email, or come to the Fledge website and click on contact.
Okay.
right? I'm findable.
Sure. And
Uh,
I'll
yeah,
post all these links in the show notes and whatnot too, so people have access to those on the website as well.
yeah. So thank you. So yeah, so Fledge Toronto, awesome. We would love to have a Fledge Toronto and a Fledge Atlanta. I think this is broadcast in Atlanta. You said.
Yeah, yeah.
And a Fledge London and Hong Kong and Singapore and Nairobi and just
That's awesome though.
major world cities.
Sure.
Um, and I'm also personally with a partner launching a seed fund this year
Okay.
to provide some more follow-on capital to Fledge grads.
Okay.
So that's called Aviary.
Okay.
There's not much on the website. The website is aviary.vc.
Okay. And
Uh,
so what kind of stuff are you guys looking to fund? Like obviously I'm assuming that kind of impactful companies or kind of some of that, some other stuff. Like tell me more kind of exactly what you're looking to fund with that.
yeah. So the goal is to leverage this program that's called Fledge. So the two pieces don't sound related, but they are. So to make more Fledge programs happen around the world, to find more companies that are worthy of investment by a venture capital firm, and then be that venture capital firm and syndicate with others to do the follow-on funding. So we're looking to use the Fledge pipeline to find those companies, to train those companies, and to smother them with support so that when we write a check to them as a venture capitalist, we're not just promising them to help, with our little black book of contacts, but truly help them with 3,000 or 4,000 mentors who are out there willing to help them.
Okay. No, that's awesome. So when exactly is that kind of launching, or you don't know yet?
Goal is 2016,
Okay.
and we'll do our damnedest to hit that goal.
Sure. So I guess what's holding you up? Is there anything that kind of the listener out there could potentially help with, or not really?
Um, uh, it's one of the limiting factors in all businesses is startup capital.
Okay.
But I'll leave it at that just to keep the SEC off my back.
Sure, fair enough. So I'm kind of curious to know, you're kind of doing a bunch of stuff, and obviously you're kind of mentoring people as well. You've done some kind of teaching, you've done tons of speaking engagements, and kind of coaching and whatnot. Do you maybe kind of want to give advice to people or kind of talk about what you usually cover and you see all the time, because you deal with startups, kind of globally, and there must be kind of a lot of things that you kind of see, either mistakes or things to do that you could kind of recommend to the listener.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try.
Sure.
So one learning that I had in this transition I had from being a techie to helping these social good entrepreneurs.
Sure.
I had been a techie for 20 years. I had started 4 software companies and wrote the business plan for the 5th one I worked at.
Sure.
And I had never taken a class in business.
Okay, interesting.
And so, first off, you don't need to take a class in business.
Okay.
Although, if you follow down the path that I followed down, you will make a lot of mistakes.
Sure.
And as we all know, most startups don't succeed. Most of them die.
Right.
And most die making the same mistakes as other ones make. So it behooves you to take a class in business and especially entrepreneurship. I'm just so old that there wasn't such easy paths for entrepreneurs back then. Right? There was the MBA path, but there really wasn't any other paths. Now, what the really surprising part was when I sat down back in 2011 to try and understand what I knew. So I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't even know what I did know in 2011.
Okay.
Sat down and I wrote my first book. It's called The Next Step. And that's since turned into a 6-book series on entrepreneurship. And the biggest surprise of writing 6 books and counting is that there isn't 3 things that entrepreneurs need to know.
Okay,
or 5,
interesting.
10, or 20. That when I so hundreds of people have read these books now. I use them in my class at Pincher University. I use them at Fledge. People buy them off of Amazon. And I meet a lot of people who said they read the book. It was really great. It's like direct. It's to the point. There's no repetition, and yet it takes 6 books and 500 pages to describe, a modicum of what you need to know to be a successful entrepreneur. That's the big surprise. It's really complicated. The part that people who've never done this don't understand, and most people who are entrepreneurs are first-time entrepreneurs, so they've never done this before, is it's really complicated. That there's hundreds of decisions you need to make, and you get a dozen of them wrong, your company dies.
Sure.
You can make a few wrong. Most of them are not betting your company, so you can make a few wrong, but you can make you make 12 decisions wrong, or 7 decisions wrong, or 5, and your company dies. Right after, it could be first year, it could be fourth year, it could be 10th year.
Got you.
And so what I've found that helps the most to get around that is know what you don't know. It's at least understand what topics you need to know to be a successful entrepreneur, which is a lot of topics. You need to know something about finance and something about sales and marketing and operations and raising money. If you don't know how to do sales, you're going to fail.
Sure.
If you don't know how to do marketing, you're going to fail. If you don't know how to raise money, you're not going to raise money. So you need to know which of those you're weak at, and you need to do something about that. And that something is more than just hiring someone. And you need to think about these things before you just jump in. So there's a big meme going around the tech world, which is screw the business plan, just build something, launch it, and see what happens. That might be true for an app, but that's not true for most companies.
I think that's really good advice, actually. I really like that. I think that's the thing that I'm really trying to kind of cover a lot with the show, and kind of why I really wanted to have you on the show is because you've been through it. You see this stuff all the time. You're helping companies. Like you said, you wrote a bunch of books on it, and I think there's a lot of misguided advice that seems to get popular online, and I think like you just said, it could work for maybe these small little app ideas, but for a real business that wants to make money, it's just not going to happen with that.
Yeah, I think where it came in the tech world was certainly the year Instagram, which I think was
a few years ago. Yeah.
There is a unspoken assumption in the world of tech and startups that if you grow really fast, you will succeed. And it's mostly true, because if you grow really fast, some company out there that has already succeeded wants your customers. And so like Instagram, when they got to whatever it was, 100 million customers.
Sure.
100 million users, because nobody paid anything. It had value. Without any revenues, it had value to an existing company. And that's just not true in most industries.
Sure.
We've sold 250,000 cook stoves in Ethiopia, a company called Obama Stove.
Okay.
No one's going to buy it. It's profitable. There is no buyer for it. When we get to 500,000 cook stoves, I still don't think there'll be a buyer. I don't think there'd be a buyer if we had 1 million cook stoves and was making $500,000 a year. There isn't a company out there looking for 500,000 customers in Ethiopia buying cook stoves.
Interesting.
Yet, if I had an app that had 500,000 downloads, I at least get an acqui-hire from that.
Right.
Right. At least I get a nice exit for the founder. And so, if you're building a real business, you got to do a little bit of planning on how you're going to stay in business after you launch, and not a ton. It doesn't have to be a year. It doesn't have to be 6 months. You can do that planning in a month. And then the second thing is, when I've seen companies sit down and do this planning, it works best when you have a lot of people giving you advice, which doesn't sound intuitive.
Okay.
This is what I learned from being a mentor at Techstars. So Techstars are now, I think, 9 years old. There's 22 Techstars around the world. It's either them or Y Combinator or the preeminent accelerator. We don't have to argue which one.
Sure.
they're both preeminent in different ways. But what's different about the two is the Techstars invented this idea of mentor whiplash.
Okay.
Inviting so many people, so many different people for their teams that the teams at some point, usually week 5 or week 6, push back and say, I can't talk to anybody else. I'm done. There's too many ideas in my head. And that sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually what helps these entrepreneurs make the breakthrough ideas that they need to succeed. So we do the same thing at Pledge. This is why we have 300 and change mentors.
Got you.
And what happens is, when you have your team of 2 or 3, you come up with a lot of ideas, but not all the ideas. When you then add in 5 or 6 or 10 more opinions, often you hear the same thing over and over again, but often people have these crazy ideas that are the real big success piece. Or or you're having a hard time picking from A or from B, and getting 7 more opinions helps you figure out which is the right questions to ask to get the right answer. It's not that the people are giving you the answer, but they're giving you the questions to ask.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
So that is really important, and it is exceedingly hard to do if you're just a lone entrepreneur without a program around you.
Got you.
It's really hard to do if you found your local economic development incubator that gives you a coach or two, or your business plan competition that gives you a coach or two. It doesn't do the same. You don't get the same effect with 1 or 2 opinions. And so Techstars and Pledge and a few other programs have this concept of lots of mentors. Mentors until you sit in. Mentors come until you say you can't handle another mentor.
Okay, interesting. So, do you have any kind of advice for people that are looking for mentors and kind of how to go about getting them?
I get that question asked all the time. I've been in that position myself as an entrepreneur. There's really only 2 ways I know to make that work. One is you either start just doing coffee shop meetings.
Okay.
And when I was doing the Pledge business plan, I succeeded at doing this by doing at least 15 meetings a week.
Wow, that many. Wow.
Sometimes 20.
That's awesome.
All over Seattle. And every meeting ended with the ask of, can you give me 2 more people to talk to?
Oh, interesting. That's really good advice, actually.
Yeah, so I started with 10, maybe 15 people, got them to agree to a coffee meeting, or in their office, wherever. I just, I got a lot of exercise those months.
Sure. Were those people you knew, or did you know some of them, not know some of them, reach out to them through kind of email, social media, that kind of stuff?
Well, I started with people I knew.
Okay.
And then asked them give me some names of people I don't know who I should talk to.
Got you. Okay.
And then, 3 meetings later, 3 meetings into this, you're now talking to, 3rd or 4th generation out.
Right. That's awesome.
And you have to ask for 2 because not everyone's going to take the meeting. So as long as you get 1 new name from every meeting, you can do this forever.
Sure.
Until you had enough opinions. And it really is just, I've done it. It really is possible to do 20 coffee shop meetings in a week. Right? It's only 4 a day.
Sure.
Right? They don't have to be long. They could be half hour, 45 minutes. And you ask, you tell them what you're doing, you ask what they're doing, and you ask them for help. And a lot of people, at least in the social good space, pretty much everyone wants to help.
Sure. No, I think that's awesome. And I think a lot of people are scared to kind of do what you just mentioned.
Well, it's hard work. I got a blog post about brute force. And there's a couple good blog posts about it I've seen on Fred Wilson's blog and Brad Feld's blog. Were two preeminent VC blogs. One's a.vc.com and the other one's feld.com.
Okay, awesome.
Brute force is just something that isn't taught anywhere. When I say brute force, that's an example. Another example would be you need a mailing list of 100 names. Maybe there's some organization out there that has 100 chapters that's useful to you.
Okay, interesting.
There isn't a list, right? You could go to you go to 100 websites and pull off contact lists, right? It might take you 4 hours or 8 hours. Yeah, so my answer to that is, okay, so it takes you 4 hours or 8 hours, but you then have the list.
Got you.
And most people wouldn't think of doing that. Like they would give up on the fact that they can't buy it,
Yeah, you're right.
and you can't, who are you going to hire to go do that? It's going to take you, 5 hours to find an intern and $100 to pay them and whatnot, or $200 to pay them. My answer is just sit down and get the work done. And
Sure.
if it's a week, fine. But now you have two things come out of this. Now you have your answer you want, and B, your competition isn't going to probably follow you in that footstep, so that you're going to have advantage over them.
Sure. I think that's actually really good advice. And I think that's the thing that I think people forget a lot of times is sometimes they want kind of the easy way out where if they just spent the time and think of creative ways to use like the internet basically to reach out to the people that you want to reach out to, you can be very successful. And you think like the world is so small now with the internet and you could basically figure out how to get a hold of anybody on the planet if you really, really want to talk to them or an organization or company. You just need to kind of think of creative ways to do that. And obviously some people are kind of have more courage than others to do certain things, and you just need to figure out what's in your comfort zone, right? And maybe you start off by sending emails and kind of maybe asking for coffee, or maybe it's a little bit more like you said, kind of email based or whatnot, right? And I think that's really good advice, and that a lot of people aren't willing to put in that much work to get like an email list or something like you just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, let's put the two ideas together. Um, and so the other way you can get mentors is to get accepted to a program that's like Fledge or like Techstars. And more and more, there's a lot of these programs. They're not all worth it, right? I've seen studies on that. But there's a lot of programs out there, and uh, there's so many programs that the only way you could possibly assure yourself to get into one this year is to apply to, 300 of them.
Wow.
Well, again,
Sure.
take the brute force effort. If you go to fsuccess.com, it's letter F, number six, letter S.com. You will find. Last I looked, there's like 2,500 programs on there.
Wow.
And there's no one application form for all of them, but you could sort them by locations and their interests, and start filling out forms. And 2 or 3 days later, you'd be done filling out 100 or 200 forms, um, and then your odds of getting into one of them are way higher than if you just apply to one.
Sure. I think that's really good advice. And like I love basically how open you are about this stuff, and that it like you always read, or like a lot of people read stuff online that it's just this like mystical thing that it just like happens to people. And I like the term like created luck in some ways,
Yeah.
because sometimes it's a bit lucky, but like you also need to work your ass off to get lucky, right?
Yeah, I was just teaching that in my class 2 weeks ago. So that topic comes up somewhere every time I teach entrepreneurship. Uh, there are different kinds of luck, and the kind of luck that makes companies succeed has nothing to do with the lottery.
Okay,
It's
interesting.
the kind of luck that's created by taking 15 coffee shop meetings per week.
Sure.
Or once you're up and running, keeping it up and having at least one random conversation per week with someone who reaches out to you, or you reach out to them. It's really serendipity. It's that something will come along that's related to what you're doing, that you would not have noticed unless you had your company up and running, unless you were out talking to people. It will land in your lap, and it could change your life. That's the kind of luck that makes companies happen, that makes co-founders find each other, that makes customers show up. You can't plan for it, but it's somewhat under your control.
Sure. No, I think that's really good advice. And I think that's kind of really fascinating to me. And that's pretty much how I've gotten anything that's kind of come in my career as well, is just, asking and reaching out to people. And sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no, and just kind of figuring out creative ways to put yourself out there, right? And these opportunities will present themselves at some point. It might take months, it might take years, and somebody you met maybe even 5, 6 years ago might just message you out of the blue one day and say, "Hey, I remember when we had coffee, and I met somebody that you should meet," or who knows, right? Networking is never a bad thing.
Correct. And there is, I try and start all my conversations with how can I help you.
Sure.
Um, that's something else I've learned from many years of networking in life. Because as soon as you start helping them, then yeah, someday they remember that conversation and turn around and help you. It's karma writ large, right? Or again, it's karma under your control.
Sure.
Be nice to everyone and try and help them more than they help you.
Sure. So I'm curious, and you probably get this question a lot, though. If it's somebody like maybe just straight out of high school or something, or they're straight out of university, they probably think that they can't necessarily help somebody that's maybe that's a bit older than them, that's been kind of in the business longer, or doing a startup. Do you get that question a lot? Like people
No,
are insecure about helping when they're kind of maybe new to the industry? Not really?
I don't think so. I don't remember. I'm sure I've had it, but I don't, it's not one that it comes up a lot.
Okay, well, no, that's good
Uh,
then, because I've just heard that from a few people that sometimes they feel like they can't add value to somebody that's maybe a lot more experienced than them. And I don't think that's true, but I was just curious if you've had that same experience, I guess, and it sounds like it's pretty rare for you.
that's pretty rare.
That's awesome.
I would love to have someone just out of high school or still in high school who understands Instagram and Snapchat help me.
Sure.
Because I've never used either of those. I don't know what they're good for. I don't know if they could be good for business, and I don't have any time to look.
Sure.
Right, my kids use them, but they're busy too.
Gotcha.
Um,
Fair.
so even then, I'm trying if I'm trying to reach that crowd, in my business, then having a conversation with someone from that crowd, whatever crowd that is useful.
Sure. I think that's really good advice. So you're also involved in kind of a pre-accelerator program. Do you want to maybe kind of talk about what that is and kind of exactly what Kick is?
Yeah, we got some new news on that.
Okay.
Yeah, so last week we announced that Kick is moved and been merged into another organization called Spring University.
Okay. Very cool.
And so what Kick was an answer to what to do with the 98% of the applicants to Fledge that don't get in,
Okay.
and what to do with the 99% of entrepreneurs who never even dared to apply to Fledge. And so what we created was a 6-week part-time pre-accelerator program that is licensed to organizations around the world to run locally.
Very cool.
It's now part of something bigger. It's called Spring University, springu.is, based in Vancouver, but not only in Vancouver.
Okay.
And Spring is a whole series of programs for entrepreneurs, everything from one-off workshops to a 6-week part-time pre-accelerator program. And it'll include a version of this that's completely online, so anyone in the world can join in.
Okay.
These are all tuition-based programs, so this is really a school.
Okay.
And the core of some of these classes is the same material that I use at Fledge. It's the same based on the books that I talked about earlier.
Sure.
And then the team up at Spring has been the most prolific licensee of Kick. They've run, I think it's now 11 programs in 2 years.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
So they know how to, and they've run some online as well. And they've run some international as well. So they have a bunch of material, and that's being added to all the licensee stuff too. So we hopefully by the end of the year we'll have 50 cities running Spring Universities, and next year hopefully 100 and onward.
Sure.
So that entrepreneurs anywhere can get lots of different levels of help for moving forward.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So we're kind of coming to the end of this. Do you maybe want to kind of quickly maybe recap, just if anybody's tuning in kind of a bit later, exactly kind of what Fledge and is, and kind of where people can find yourself and your companies and ventures online?
Sure. So again, the big recap is I only really do one thing, right? It looks like I do a lot, but all I do is help entrepreneurs I do it from from Fledge, which is what I call a full-scale global accelerator program. You can find that at fledge.co. Through my partnership with Spring, which is springu.is, which is a slew of smaller programs for entrepreneurs. I also teach an MBA class in entrepreneurship at a business school called pinshow.edu. And I have a 6-book series, which will be republished in 2016, updated, called The Next Step. And you can find that in my blog on lunarmobiscuit.com. And if you can't see the links or you're driving or whatever, if you just search Luni, Luni, in Seattle on Google, or Luni and Fledge on Google, they'll find all this for you.
Perfect, Luni. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to, kind of following your adventures and, seeing what you keep, doing, and it's been awesome, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show.
All right, thanks, man. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. The music for the show was done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.